Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it? Up and down.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Johansson show. I am joined by Molly Spartan. Molly, thank you for coming on.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Really excited. You've got a lot of exciting stuff. I know we're recording on Friday. I'm doing the first thing I've ever done where I'm pushing it the same day, just so we get it ahead of ICW Bard. How do you feel about the upcoming cage match?
I'm confident in it. I don't know how Angel Hayze is feeling. That's more the point. And I'm actually more concerned about how ICW is feeling about it.
Yeah.
Because for me, the one thing that I'm going to ask until I'm blue in the face is, why is that vacant women's championship not on the line in that cage match?
Yeah.
It was vacated on my proper debut back just before lockdown, and has been vacant ever since. And this is the first big show. This show's going on Peacock in America, and obviously in the WWE Network everywhere else in the world. But why on earth is that championship not on the line? And to me, I personally see it as because they know the inevitable, and they don't want that. They don't want me, someone that they've overlooked for years, getting their hands on their precious championship. And they're going to find a way of giving it to whoever they wish to have that championship. But I'm definitely not that. But as I said, I am the inevitable. So, okay, it's not on the line this time, but there's going to be a point where you cannot deny it to me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be holding that championship in the middle of the ring. And you're going to have to post about it. You're going to have to put pictures and videos of it up, and it's going to kill them. But I'll bide my time. But mark my words, I will hold that championship one day, and they're going to be lucky I don't set it on fire when I do.
What happens if, like, after this cage match is all said and done, then start looking at the women's title picture and you're not involved?
Oh no, that won't be an option, because I think they've figured out now that although you might not agree with my tactics, you might not agree with how I handle my business, that if you ignore me even longer, like they've done previously, it's not going to work out well for everybody. Because I'm not going to be scared to put my hands on people who are not just stepping over those ropes to get in the ring.
Why do you think it took you so long to be given the opportunity in ICW?
Well, it's not a secret, and for many people who have been around ICW for so long, I originally started in the production side of things. When I sort of talk about how I became a wrestler, it's that weird sort of thing where I watched wrestling for years. I've actually got a Bachelor of Honours degree in television because there was a point in my life where when I watched wrestling, particularly WWE, there wasn't anybody that I seen myself in.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the past, there were people like China and Bull Nakano, etc., who, like China was a whole different spectacle of a person, and I absolutely adore her. But there wasn't really anybody my size, my stature, where I'm from, with an accent like mine. If anything, when Drew went over, they ended up giving him elocution lessons so that his accent wasn't like mine.
Yeah.
So I never ever seen myself as being one of the wrestlers, because it wasn't portrayed to me that was something that was viable. It was something that I felt like if I pursued, I'd be rejected. I wouldn't be accepted because I wasn't a model or a fitness model or like sort of that kind of look. Like, it's nothing against her personally. She was a great performer, but I don't see myself in somebody like Kelly. I just don't. That's you can see that it's quite visible nowadays. It's a very different scene. It's something that I think if I was younger watching it now, I could see myself going into it, but I always knew that I wanted to work in wrestling. I wanted to somehow be part of it, and I thought, if I can't be the wrestler, I'll be the person that tries to do everything else on the outside. So, at uni, although it's a television degree, that was because I went on WWE's website, seen what jobs were available, and seen what qualifications they would require for their staffing. I sort of spent 2 years at university. I'd book every Tuesday. It was like a screening room that had like a projector and watch Raw and take notes. I actually found my university notebook the other day, and it's quite cringy. I thought CM Punk was the greatest thing since sliced bread in this period of time. Like, there's literally a sentence that just says, CM Punk is great. Like, I opened up and that was the first thing I read, and I was like, all right, okay, it was that time. So yeah, I learned, like, where did the camera positions go? Like, what makes sense? So, like, a lot of times I'll, like, in my head project things like they could go this way or they could go that way, even to this day, because it's programmed, it's sort of in my head on how I thought the shows worked and stuff. And in turn, like, I ended up doing a project with Billy Kirkwood and met him, and obviously he's a commentator, and through a different project with the Stand Comedy Club, he basically introduced me to ICW, and in doing so met Mark Dallas, basically said, I can give you a camera for free, because at this point we were still sort of, I think they just sort of started getting into the classic grand, and sort of that way it was still very underground.
Was this before the documentary that was on BBC?
Yeah, this was way before. If you actually watch it, there's like, you'll see me sort of going past with a laptop. There's a point where I'm sitting in the background with a laptop because the BBC are filming everybody else, and I'm going like, right, you're first, you're second. Like, I'm just sort of, I was in the corner away from all the cameras. If you watch it, you'll be like, there she is, there she is, there she is again. Like, I'm just not part of it. But I was very much a part of the running of Backstage for a long time. I filmed sort of all the backstage promos and incidents, and was sort of a big part of it for a long, long time. But I started sort of training to be a wrestler because it's a story for a rom-com, right? How I describe how I started training, because before he was my husband, obviously I knew Wolfgang through working at ICW. We'd sort of become friends and work colleagues, but before anything romantic ever bloomed on the horizon, there was sort of a day, I remember it being a show in Edinburgh, but it was like, I vividly remember us like passing the beams out from the ring from Studio 24 to the van. And he was sort of talking to me about how he'd always wanted to coach. That was what he's seen his next step being. He felt like he'd done so much in Scottish wrestling, what he wanted to sort of give back. And he sort of just talked about how, obviously at that time, Source and PBW were the main sort of training schools in Glasgow. And it was his friends that sort of ran, people that he'd known for years, ran both these schools, and he didn't want to upset one or the other by going to each other, but he also had this sort of vision of how he wanted to coach and the sort of people that he wanted to be part of his coaching team. I remember him just talking to me about this, and he was just sort of chatting away, and I sort of said, okay, if this is what someone what you do, I'll be student number one. I'll be your first student, therefore that's the first hurdle. You're over your first hurdle, you've got your first student, now you've got the rest, now you've got to sort everything else. And then about a year later, GPWA was born, and he'd obviously found his space that he was going to coach in. It was him, BT Gunn, Red Lightning, Jack Jesser, and of course, God rest his soul, Lionheart at the time. I was part of the first class. I was the first student and the first girl of GPWA, and was part of this sort of how the coaching works is when you come in, you go into like an induction, you do a first 8 weeks to get to a certain point. If you're able to do that, you go to the second class to get to a certain point before you're basically into the main class. When you're able to do basically the basic foundations of any match or anything. And I'll be honest, I don't know, are we allowed to say a naughty word?
Yes.
I'm just checking. I remember after doing the 8 weeks, I sort of wanted to sort of learn it because I felt like I'd learned everything else bar what was in the ring. I knew everything around the ring and outside the ring, be it building the ring, but I never knew anything inside. I thought I would learn a new perspective. I'd learn how sort of things flow better, and could that sort of bring a better product by understanding it better. But I remember doing the 8 weeks and Adrian sitting me down, and I'm sort of doing the like, right, you're through to the next bit. Which at the time felt very like Britain's Got Talent, X Factory. It was weird. They were like, come in, sit down, right, you're through to the finals. You're like, like
you're going to the judges' houses.
Yeah, go to judges' houses. But him actively saying to me, I'll be honest, mate, I thought you were going to be shit. And I was like, thanks. And he was like, well, you weren't. Like, you're not. He was like, you're not the best. Obviously, you're not like the best, because of course at that point nobody's the best. Yeah. But you're not terrible. You're not awful. You can do everything we've asked. You try everything, even when it's clearly you're just like, stop it. Like I remember there was a time I was trying to come in over the top rope, and they had to be like, right, stop it. You've landed on your head 3 times now. This isn't good for you. Stop. I was like, okay, I can sit down. Because I'm so just like, I can do this. I can do this. But I'm sort of saying, like, I was so driven, and he was able to actually weirdly see how passionate I was for professional wrestling. But there was also like a weird moment in that 8 weeks where I sort of found where I always wanted to be. Because for years, it not being portrayed to me believing that I wasn't wanted, I wouldn't be accepted, purely because of my size, where I was from, like all those sorts of things, was no longer a factor. Because, like, especially at that time, like Piper Niven, Viper, whatever you want to know, what you know her by, was absolutely crushing it in Japan. And she was just so comfortable in her skin. She was so confident in who she was. And that's really what was important. And that's really what people connect with. That's what people really have this close connection with her and want to see her, because she's so comfortable in who she is that it radiates off her. It's absolutely beautiful. And she's stunning. And it's just this oozing confidence in who she is. And it sort of weirdly taught me to be like that. Like, I was always confident and comfortable in who I was, and the size I was, and the clothes and everything that I wore. But the thing that I loved most in the world, I always believed wouldn't accept me. But in that 8 weeks, learning that I could be fully accepted, and I could do this by being me and not having to conform to what I assumed was required. But obviously within that time of me training, I'd been working for ICW for maybe 5 years. Okay. So for so long, I remember, and it was an ex-employee, nobody that's there just now, but it always really stuck with me what they said. And it was, I remember I was on a show and I was filming, and I'd been at training, and I'd come straight from training to the show, and them pulling me aside and asking me, like, why was I trying so hard? I was like, what? And he was like, why are you trying so hard with training? And the word have stuck in my head forever, and it'll never leave me. And it's always going to be a thing that, like, drives me. Was they asked, why did I try so hard? Because people started training so that they can work in the wrestling business, where I already had my place. I had my job. So why was I trying so hard? And the fact that they couldn't understand that it had nothing to do with the job that I was doing, it was because I wanted to do that. I wanted to be a wrestler. But I knew sort of then that wasn't going to really happen. And for years I felt like I was bursting my arse. Like, there was a crazy point where I realised one year when I was looking through my diary that I had wrestled every single weekend. Not once did I wrestle in Scotland in a year. which is crazy when you actually think about it. And the fact that I was known here, it wasn't that I didn't have people that weren't wanting to see me wrestle here. It was the fact that I just hadn't. It was that mental block where they'd be like, you need to tell me when you're wrestling in Glasgow. You need to tell me when you're wrestling in Scotland. And I was like, but I can't, because I'm not. Like, I spent more time overseas wrestling, not even in the UK, than I did in my home country. And it was that feeling of like, I was constantly being overlooked because it was believed that I had my job. I was doing what I was meant to be doing. And that was fair enough when the early years, when I wasn't being booked everywhere and I wasn't going here, the next thing, that I wasn't trying to rush back from a booking in London to come and make sure that I could do what I was doing backstage. And there was a point, and obviously, where I stopped to care as much because I felt I'm seeing everybody walk in this door and I'm standing right here and I'm just constantly being overlooked. And there's only a certain point where somebody breaks. Yeah. So a lot of people ask, like, why am I attacking Angel Hayze? But the thing is this isn't personal. This isn't about Angel Hayze. She can think that I'm going after her, and I understand that has happened before. It's happened in other promotions as well, where people think that I'm after them, when in actual fact, I'm after the company. I'm here now to make sure that I am never overlooked again, and that you can never get rid of me, because there is no excuse anymore. I'm not there doing a job anymore. And I'm here to completely rip apart, although it was a completely honourable division to be in because of the likes of Piper Niven and Kaylee Ray and Carmel Jacobs and Casey Owens, who's still there. Things have to change, because it's now gotten to a point where I feel like with women's wrestling in general, we can't be stagnant. We can't just become complacent and accepting that, no. I'm going to constantly be battering down that door for change. And ICW as a company has annoyed me. This is me being calm because you've been so nice to host me on this. This is me being deep breaths and thinking about what I'm going to say so that I don't come off as this complete hell-bent bitch. But yeah, that's why I was overlooked, because I was actively told, and again I'll stress, it was an ex-employee who was obviously let go for other reasons, but the fact that they questioned why I was bothering to do this because I already had a job was already quite telling to what I should expect. At the time, I hoped that wasn't going to be it, but finding the reality that it was. And when I got my opportunity back in March, when obviously everything was still with the crowd, the last sort of crowd shows, I knew I was having to kick the door in. I knew I had to make myself unexcusable anymore. Yeah. And I feel like I did do that, and I definitely am now.
What was the conversations like then when they're finally bringing you in after trying so long? And the fact that the first year of your wrestling, you've not even wrestled in Scotland. Like, what did they say when they was bringing you in? Did you ask why it's taken so long, or?
No, because I understood. It's a weird sort of thing where, yes, there is a part of it that has resentment towards it, but I think there was that chance where they had to. That I keep saying, like, it's undeniable now. I'd worked for companies like ROH, and I'd worked for, like, they tried to, like, I always say they did try to book me in, like, the previous December.
Yeah.
But I genuinely, and I have to say, like, although I was happy that I was being offered it, at that time I was actually going to be in Tel Aviv. So actually having them phone me and be like, hey, I would like to book you for December. And I'm like, sorry, I'm in Tel Aviv. Was it like a little bit like a moment? I remember being in a car with friends at the time, and them genuinely laughing, going, I need that on a t-shirt. Sorry, I'm in Tel Aviv. But yeah, it's one of those ones where I think it was at a point where they couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't just going down south to wrestle and coming back up, and I was wrestling for quite well established or very established promotions. I was going overseas. I was going to here, then everywhere. I was actually in demand. And I think like there's a bit of both. It's a difference between, there's a bit of complacency as well. It's like if you have something in front of you, sometimes you don't realise you're ignoring it because it's been there all along. But once I think I stepped away from ICW, because it was becoming too much of, I had to stay up because if I wanted to actually give it a proper go, I had to step away. And in doing so, they were able to go, well, she smashed it here. She's doing well there. So then when they brought me in, and obviously I've always had Casey Owens, who I tag with the She-Wolves down south, and we've travelled everywhere. It's that weird sort of thing where she was actually my first ever match.
Wow.
She was part of the first ever tag match I was in, which was the Owens twins versus me and Carmel Jacob. And then she was my first singles match as well. So she's been with me my entire career. And like, there's no, like, it kind of makes sense that she was the maid of honor at my wedding. And how close we are, because she's been there when I've screwed up and she's been there when I've been on my highs. And it's the same with her. Like, when she did her first like NXT UK thing in Blackpool, there's a point, if you listen to it back, you can vividly hear me shouting, "Go on, Casey." Like, it's a very distinct Scottish accent just floating across everybody. I remember somebody going, "Did you just shout?" And I was like, "Yes, I did. Yes, I did." But like, we've always been there for each other. We've always had each other's back. Like, when she won the title every time, I was there at the curtain to give her a hug. We were there for each other through thick and thin. And yeah, she was always sort of saying like, why on earth are you just like, you can't ignore her anymore. And eventually they were like, you're right, we can't ignore it anymore. I got in and I knew, right, I need to prove myself more than anybody ever else has. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal when you come from GPWA to go up to ICW, because there are stepping stones in it. There's the £5 wrestling shows, then you've got Wrestling Experience Scotland, but they're obviously more family orientated. And then you've got ICW, and it's like,
pinnacle.
Yeah, it's like going from a pack of puppies in the £5 wrestling show, because predominantly it's like friends and family and stuff like that coming to see what you're doing in your first matches. Then you've got your Wrestling Experience Scotland, which is family orientated, so they're not as ruthless, but it's not your friends and family. You need to learn how to interact with strangers and get strangers to react with you. And then there's the Lion's Den, that is ICW, where it's people that are like, do something impressive or I'm saying nothing, and you're like, okay. But feeling like I had to go face that as well as the Lion's Den that was backstage, because these are people that I'd known for nearly a decade plus. You
had a point to prove.
And I had a massive point to prove and chip on my shoulder that I had to deal with. And I think I did that. I think I was able to actually make some form of it's very stereotypical to say that I was there to make a statement, but at the end of the day, sometimes the cliche lines are cliched for a reason.
Yeah.
And that was, I completely had a point to prove. I had to make a statement, and I had to show them I could have been here ages ago, but I'm here now, and this is what you need to deal with now.
Definitely. And you mentioned like working down south and here in England, and doing a lot of stuff with She-Wolves in TNT, Futureshock champion as well. Like, how did that feel when you beat Lana Austin to become Futureshock champion, but again, you're still not getting booked in Scotland? Like,
Futureshock was a massive, like, it's that weird. No, like but at that point when I went to Future Shock, I had a bookings in Scotland, but it was predominantly with the school. It was the asylum shows and things like that. There was the other booking in. I think I'd done some wrestling in London. I wrestled in like Newcastle a few times and stuff like that. But Future Shock was like a massive stepping stone for me that I don't even think that people could even like comprehend sometimes. Like Chris Brooker at the time was the guy that was booking it. He brought me in, and I'd known Chris for years. Every time he would do tours up here with there's guys like Rowdy Piper and Diamond Dash Blaze and stuff, I'd go and help. I'd literally just be like, hi, he was a friend of Billy's. He was doing it by himself. I was like, look, I'll come. Just let me come and see the show and I'll help you with anything else. I'll punt your t-shirts, I'll do whatever. And it was one of those things where, so I became friends with him, and he obviously started booking and running Future Shock. And he booked my husband. And I think just as a friend, he'd sort of threw me a bone and was like, do you want booked too? And I was like, yes, please. Yeah, please. So he gave me one match with Lana Austin, and it went great. Like, there was a gif of me power bombing her on the ring apron and everything. And at that point in time, I also knew that was something that I needed to kick the door down with, because it was the first place that I knew was established. I knew the sort of the performers and talent that had come from Future Shock, and what they've produced. So being aware of a place, like getting told, do you want a booking at Future Shock, and me going, I know what and where that is, like instantly, not going like if you get a message from a person and it's just 3 letters and you're like, let me look, oh, that's there, yeah, like I'll still go, but it's that case of I had to say, sometimes you need to look up, where exactly is that again? All right, but Future Shock, I knew that's Manchester and the surrounding area, and I knew who had come, the people that had come from it. So I knew this was a massive opportunity to sort of be part of a locker room that had sort of lineages and had such great talent. And at that point, like, it was your Zach Gibsons and your James Drakes and your Ashton Smiths and your Tyson T-Bones and all that were sort of mainstays in this sort of promotion. And obviously we all know where they are now and how great they're doing. But it was that way where I was like, right, this is a real chance for me to learn here. So I took the match and it went great. Like, Lana is just an incredible talent. She's very good at sort of adapting so that the chemistry sort of flows between you, kind of thing. So even the first match was a big deal to me, like a massive deal to me. And people seem to be happy with it. Like, I obviously was like poking folk that I knew that had been in ICW to go, can you watch this, please? And they're like, yeah, okay, thanks very much. And everybody was impressed. And then after that, it was one of those things where they then approached and went, we'd like you to come down more. And then it became, we'd like you to actually be like a main said in the roster this year. And it was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then learning that Jayla Dark was going to be joining me. And then inevitably Casey Owens joined us and we started the Queen Bees and Future Shock. And that was massive. And that was really a year where I was really able to sort of discover who Molly Spartan was as a performer and as a talent, and like who I was, how I was going to approach things, how I approach things, because everybody's different in life on how we approach things. But yeah, for me, that was a massive thing. And then being able to take the Future Shock Women's title to actually be part of their history. Because if you go on their site and you look at previous champs, my face is always going to be there. Is a massive honour, and it's massive to have. And I don't think even like Chris Brooker can even, although I have said to him, I don't think he can understand how much for me that meant and how much of a game changer it was. But at the time, it was that way where I didn't actually realise that I hadn't wrestled in Scotland until the end of the year that I'd done, because I was going through my diary looking at like I'd taken notes like, oh, remember you've got to put this date into the next diary. And it was after I was sort of looking, I was like, wait a minute. And I went back and went, here. And I just realised, like, I've wrestled every weekend, plus, because that was like running in from the previous, and I've not wrestled in my home country, which was just one of those, like, that makes no sense. Like, why am I having to go so far? But yeah, it was that kind of weird notion. But at the same time, I knew I was doing something right. The fact that I was getting booked every weekend, that I wasn't just, it was a weird sort of thing being in demand, not only in a different country, but a totally different region and accent and everything than where you're from. Were like I remember getting booked in Tidal and Leeds, and them saying like, because me going like, oh, do you want, like, should I get like a Scottish car full or things like that? And like the people they booked, and I was sort of trying to recommend other talents from this area, and they were like, I see, but you're known here because of Futureshock. And it was that notion of like, I'm known in like a strip of England because of promotions that I've worked for. It's not because I'm Scottish or I'm known for like these areas.
The North East scene.
Yeah, rather than my home country. It was bizarre, but it was bizarre but I understood when they said it. I was like, oh yeah, and I was like, fair enough. I'm not gonna be like, no, I shouldn't be, like, because I'd busted my arse there. But yeah, it was a strange notion that only sort of hit me afterwards. But it's a notion that's not going to happen anymore, which I'm happy to say.
So when you do finally, you've become a mainstay on the Futureshock roster, and then you beat Lana Austin, who was your first match in the company, and now you're beating her for the championship. Like, how did that feel? Because it's one thing them saying, yeah, we're going to use you a bit more. Actually, we want you to be a mainstay, but now, actually, we want you to be the champion. Like, how did that feel for you?
It was a very sort of interesting thing, because it taught me a lot, especially being in Futureshock, because Brooker always had sort of, not mental ideas, but a different approach to sort of things, because he'd come from like comedy rather than just wrestling. He'd always been a wrestling fan. But it sort of taught me, and it was one of those things where I learned how important and how you use the championship is more important than just having it. Yeah. Like, you can have a title, but are you only holding it because it's expected for there to be a title? Like, is it expected just, like, I mean, there's places where it's just expected that the women have a title, there's a heavyweight title, there's tag titles, and maybe there's like a cruiserweight, zero, whatever you want to call it, sort of title. But there, it was used as like an element so that when I held it, I had it for nearly a year. Yeah. But it was the fact that I was able to use it as something to drive a sort of story. It was used as something that made it feel important. Yeah. And that's the main goal. When you've got a championship, you holding that is the most important thing to you, and it is the most important thing that you keep a hold of that. And it was important in order to make sure that the crowd themselves desperately wanted me to not have it. Yeah. And when I came out with it, people were like, Jesus Christ, here they come. Like, it was that way where there's a difference between, I always want people to react, and if it's cheering, that's great. I want them to cheer for Lana. I desperately want that. And I want them to boo me. If they come up to me and go, I don't want to talk to you. Although, like, you think, oh, that's about me. That's great, because I've been able to get them to be like, she's a dick. And I'm like, yeah. And holding it was a great honour, because I knew who had held that championship in the past. Getting it from taking it off somebody like Lana Austin was such a big thing too. And the way we took it off her was so unique and creative in a way, because it wasn't a sense of I just had a one-on-one match with her. I basically refused to tell her who her match was. She started wrestling Casey, and then after they had finished, I announced it was actually me that she was wrestling, and then took the championship off her that way. So even the way that I got the title off Lana Austin was, and I've always said that I have plan A to plan Z and a little bit thing in my back pocket as a backup. And being able to especially show women doing something different, doing something in a creative manner. And the title was a massive thing that surrounded that. Although, like, the amount of people that have held it that are incredible talents, was the fact that I was able to be part of that bubble was incredible and such an honour. But at the same time, this meant that I could do something that was different, that was something that people hadn't seen the women's division do before. Because I know before that was Lana and April Davies, and they had like this best of three sort of match, and it was for the title, and it was incredible, and it was something that people there had never seen the women do previously. So I knew what I was up against, and I knew what we had to do was be able to captivate an audience for them to completely be like, I don't know if they're ever going to drop this. So when sadly we did, it really meant something, and the place was like, wow, like that's really what you're striving for. Because it's all well and nice and it's lovely to be like, I have a title, but if you don't do anything with that, if you don't make that important, if you don't use that to drive forward everybody, not just yourself, like, it's nice. It's like, yeah, this is lovely. Somebody gave me this. But if you make it all about you, then it's just a prop.
Yeah.
It's just a shiny thing that you carry to the ring. You really need to try and make it worth something. That's what was important to me. And learning that and understanding that, so that if anybody gives me, if I ever get any other championships in the future, it's the same approach I'll bring to it. It's not going to be just, thanks very much for the heavy weight in my bag. Like, it's thank you for believing, or thank you for allowing me to even be in that sort of title sort of area of your promotion kind of thing. Yeah, I hold it or not, like, that's sort of part of it.
Yeah, definitely. It comes down to the company as well, and the company allowing you to do that, because I've seen so many companies, especially here in the UK, where it's been, you don't really have women's matches, so they'll have that token women's match, and well, you don't have a title for the women's title, and you're supposed to be a big company, so then the women's title comes on there, but then you don't see the belt defended in 6 or 7 shows, and when it is, it's just a throwaway match, and it kind of, there was no point in having it, because if anything, it's devaluing the women's division, where it seems like with Futureshock you had the ball to run with it and make something meaningful what the fans were invested in.
Like, I understand why, like, even the ICW championship was obviously vacated, because it was done in a scenario where it wasn't something that was feasible. Like, Evil couldn't continue on with it, and of course I don't blame ICW for the world going on fire. But I understand why it's been vacant so long. Like, that's a different sort of thing. But it's not just to do with the promotion. Sometimes you need to have the gall to say no, not in a bad way. I think, like, you need to think about how, if someone asks you to do something, but you think it's right. For girls in particular, we need to strive, and I keep saying this, like, yes, the women's wrestling has been viewed on a different scale now. It's treated with a lot more respect than it used to be. I remember going to, like, pubs and clubs to watch WrestleMania, and when the women's match would come on, you'd actively see people getting up and going to the bathroom. Like, you'd watch a room go, right, okay, here we go, like, and you're like, but all right, okay. because that's what was construed to be, that's what you did, that was okay to do so because, look, it's still Aussies, but obviously like WWE, but places like Stardom in Japan have always been sort of a sort of beacon of hope, but it was the hope that that was going to start trickling over here, and obviously it has. So we're now at a point where people are willing to actually stay and watch. People are willing to watch women's wrestling now on a sort of outlook. But we can't get complacent that that's it, because if we get complacent, then it becomes the people that are completely opposed to it in the first place, and completely opposed to the fact that women are in a ring, are the ones that are going to strive to either belittle us or sort of surpass us. So we can't become complacent. And there are still going to be people that, and it's not like they're chauvinistic or anything of that way, but they're so used to women's wrestling being a certain way that they automatically sort of book it in a certain fashion, or they only give you this amount, like, you know what I mean? It's that kind of way where it's just, as you're saying, fill in spot. And I understand there's schools out there who run their own shows, and yes, they only have one women's match on the card, but that's probably because they've only got one female trainee and they need to ship somebody else in, and that's an expense. I totally understand that. That's just not a dig any place that that's how it is. I understand there are more male trainees out there than there are female. I know that from a place where there was a long time where I was the only female trainee, which also adds to the point of the fact that most of my training has been done in the ring with guys. I have wrestled, I've been in the ring and done more things with guys than I have with girls. And it's that way where there's some guys that I wrestle with that I completely dominate just by physicality alone. And then there's other guys that obviously I'm smaller and stand, but that's fine. But I think there's a point where you need to be able to sort of have an open discussion with places, and when, say, something stereotypical is brought up, that you go, no, not in like a, I'm not doing that, no, thank you so much. We need to start thinking for ourselves. We need to have ideas in the back of our head, so that if somebody goes, you're doing this, and you go, well, I think this would be better. If they say no, I understand. You don't argue with a promoter, do your job. But at the end of the day, we also need to start thinking. We really need to start thinking for ourselves in order to have the discussions, not an argument, and not just a no. You need a bit, like, we need to be the ones that are coming forward with this. So I've always got this like little catalogue in the back of my head of like, we should do this, and if I go, no, I don't think so, I think that's not really progressive, I think that's very stereotypical, what about this instead? And then a discussion can happen. And there's lots of places where I've done that, and I understand there's a fear of, if you not argue with the promoter, but if you try and sort of contradict somebody, they might be like, you're never getting booked again. And okay, there might be places that do that, but the more places that are open to discussions are probably going to be the places that are succeeding far greater. And I could even say on a personal point, like the places that have been open to discussions with me over things have definitely succeeded, have definitely just got better and better, because the working environment is such a welcoming place to be in, that people strive to work there. People get there and want to put on great shows, want to put on a great performance, and in doing so, fans are happy because they're getting good performance, and fans are happy to see more women wrestling on the card because that's what they want to see, because they know the women are going to deliver. So yeah, I'm a bit older than other girls in the scene, so I think maybe that it's become with age and confidence and that kind of like, I really don't care if you don't like me, but this isn't about me. This is about the greater good kind of thing. But yeah, it's one of those. But again, like, it's not a dig on, like, I understand there's lots of promotions and lots of like school run shows and things like that where they only have one girl, and the fact that they're even going to the even they go into the lines to get someone in to help them, to give them experience in the ring with other performers, is something that I do tip my hat. So when I do get booked for promotions wherever, and it's clearly like from the school and it's their only girl, like I completely try and do my best to like help out and give sort of advice, etc. But yeah, I get creative, but I think that's because I've been there. I've been doing that for many years before I stepped in the ring anyway, so I have that sort of creative conversation. And like making TV shows and that, you need to sort of have that point where you go, no, that's a terrible idea. It's not going to go down well. This is a better one. Or you find it's good when you find the place in the middle where they get what they want, you get what you'd want, and everybody's happy in the end.
100%. So following from like Futureshock and stuff, and you mentioned Tidal wanted to book you because of the work you've been doing. TNT with She-Wolves as well. You've been doing a lot of work there. What's it been like with TNT? And tell us all about the She-Wolves.
TNT is a place where like it's incredible to work in. Okay, like when I'm saying about a promotion who is open to discussion, they are that place. They are that place that is open. Like Christ, when we first the first time I went to a TNT show was because Wolfie, Stevie Boy, Casey, and BT Gunn were all booked on a show down there, and it was my first day off at work for like 2 weeks, and I was sitting in and I went, wait, so everybody that I'd go hang out with is leaving, right? And at that point, like Kaylee was over in Japan, so she went, you know what I mean? Like other people that I'd actively be like, hey, we should get pizza and watch wrestling, I'd all left to go to Liverpool, and I was like, what? And then they said, there's a space in the car, and I was like, I'm coming, right? So I went down, and when I went in, I introduced myself, hi, and I was like, I'll go help at your merch. So I went and helped at the merch stand because I was like, I don't want to be useless. Like I just hate that kind of standing there going, like I offer to help. If they go, like, just go find a seat, it's fine, like that's nice. But I always offer a hand. I'm just one of those people where I don't like sitting still and up just. So I'm like, I'll go help with them. So I went and helped and sort of stood behind their merch. And I watched the product, I watched the show, and it was great. And everybody was like up for it. It had that sort of early, like it reminded me of ICW in the days of the Classic Grand. There was that early buzz, that kind of, it was still pretty underground and a bit grungy, and there was a bit, the sort of the oil was still trying to get applied to the cut, but there was some in there that was exciting. And like Casey, she was in a gauntlet match, and it was great. It was great to watch, but it was weird sort of watching it going, I have an idea. And to be honest, we had the run at Futureshock, but there was part of me that was like, I'm not done with that yet. Like, I had so much other things in my head where I was like, I'm not done with it. I want this to progress. And I felt like it could really progress in a more adult environment. Like, cause obviously Futureshock is very family orientated. I was like, we could really ramp it up and get really sort of more vicious than what we previously have been, even though we were pretty damn vicious in Futureshock. Like, we knew it was in a more suitable environment, let's say. So I'd been on I'd been on a tour. I was on a tour with Chris Jericho with Inside the Ropes. And I was sitting we were coming back for like, we're coming back for London, trying to figure out what plane we were on. But I remember sitting in the airplane, and it was in my head, and it was constantly going in my head going, just message them. Just message. So I got the brass neck and I sent them a mess and was basically like, hi, I'm so-and-so. I have an idea. This is my idea if you're willing to listen to it. I could be rambling and you ignore that, but it's in my head and I want to say it to you. So I pitched this idea. They were willing to listen to me, which was massive. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. They could have easily just ghosted me and been like, nope, delete this crazy woman. But they listened, and we had a discussion and we had a phone call and sort of pitched this idea of what I had in mind before moving on, and actively said to them, just let me come once, let me start it, and if it's awful and you hate it, you never have to see me again, and I will leave you alone, and I will never talk to you again. But I feel so confident in what I'm pitching that this is why I'm like, okay. So lo and behold, they sort of go, okay. I was like, right. And it was meant to, I was going to be going down later in the year. Things happened, and instead I decided just to walk in on one of their shows with a chair, sat in the middle of their crowd with a chair, and then proceeded to punch a security guard, jump the barrier, and just put myself in a match. And I've never left. I would say the She-Wolves were formed there, and that's been 3 years now, and it's still a very and that's the thing with TNT, is that it's quite normal now for there to be 2-3 women's matches on the card, and it's not because they're pandering or they're going like it's because it's what people want to see. People stay when that music hits. They go, oh, shit's about to go down. Like, okay, what are they up to now? Who are they going to slag off? Who are they going to like? And it's that way where it's a very sort of, people want to work there.
Yeah.
Like, with everything put aside, like TNT's always been a place that has made sure that the women have their own dressing facilities and they have their own areas. The women, like, there's snacks and there's water and there's everything put aside for their talent. They always provide for their talent just greatly. Like, they have, like, you walk in, like the venue we're in now, we're in Fusion, we've moved to another venue. There's the male change room and there's a female change room, and downstairs there's like this bench, and it's got fruit and brownies, and there's always bottles of water, and they've got a bucket that's full of beer. And the rule is you're not allowed to touch it. You can have one when you come back from your match. You don't touch it going to the, like, unless it's like clearly like an Austin prop or something like that, but you don't. And everybody respects that rule because they're going to their sort of the courtesy of actually giving us stuff that nobody takes the biscuit kind of thing. But it's always been an environment that's been really progressive, really welcoming, a real safe environment. Like, I remember obviously with the whole sort of like speaking out movement and things like that, I remember talking, and it was before all that, I'd posted up about how there was a time where I was at the merch stand and a fan came, well, not a fan, an absolute slimeball creep, but he'd spoken to Rio, and somebody had said something about blah, 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 his pal, and Rio went, his pal wants to talk to you. And that's how I went, yeah, what is it? And I leant over, and started whispering, we were like, oh, I'd love to mud wrestle you, and I'd love to blah, blah, blah. The thing is, I completely just undressed the guy, called him out on it straight away, said how much a creepy, he was lucky. I think the words were, you're lucky that there's a table between us because I'd be throwing you out by your boss, son.
I'm literally, you're nuts in it.
Oh, I just dressed him there, like, that's not appropriate, blah, blah, blah. And I remember, like, this sort of, like, crowd turning and, like, because it was just watching it and partly going, is this like, they were trying to figure out if it was real or not because we're so vocal anyway. And when they realised it wasn't real, like, the guy ended up getting chucked out, all his pals left, everything. It was dealt with in a weird manner. There was that way where I remember saying it afterwards, and the management coming up to me and going, are you okay? Is everything, like, because they found out after it, and it was like, is everything okay? And they were like actively going, you go through these photos, because they figured out that he'd had like a VIP, so there was like a meet and greet. Which one it is? He's banned from the shows. Well, if you want, we'll go and they were really there for me, like 100%. And I was like, it's fine. I've dealt with the scenario. I've dealt with the issue. I appreciate the lengths that you're going to make sure that I feel safe and secure here. But they've always sort of just been like that. Like, it's never been let's put this into place. It's just always been like that, and that's why it's one of those places that I'm happy to go work with. And like, of course, when all that happened, like David Starr and stuff like that were still champions. As soon as things came out in that, they were removed. There wasn't. It was, they did their investigations. They found obviously what evidence, and that and instantly were like, right, get rid of. Like, they really went to the lengths to make sure that everybody knew that when we did return back to shows, that it was a safe, welcoming, warm environment still, just with certain individuals removed.
Yeah.
But Christ, when we go back, there's going to be they've got an all-women's show coming up because they feel like it's something that's needed, because we've done so well that it's that the girls want to be seen. But the fact that there's going to be an all-women's deathmatch tournament,
I was going to say, wasn't that cancelled because of COVID?
Yeah, it was going to be earlier. It's still. You think that's not going to happen? Are you kidding me? No. But it's the fact that people were buying tickets to it because they're like, yes, deathmatch tournament.
So good.
It just happens in its lassies, but nobody really. It's the fact that that's not a focused element on it. If that makes sense, like it will be obviously in advertising, etc. And that when we promote it, but it's one of those ones where people are doing it because they're like, yeah, these girls can give us the show that we want. We want the carnage.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen. And when you've got somebody like Charlie Evans as part of the women's roster, it's going to be carnage. Absolute carnage.
Is there anybody you're wanting to get in there with in that deathmatch setting?
No. Who would I want? I mean, part of me would love to get in with Charlie Evans, but it's that kind of way where it's like the idea of like getting in the ring with somebody like Miko or like Shayna Baszler is like, you want to because it's slightly terrifying. Like, it's that kind of, I don't know if I want to be in the ring when I see Deathmatch Charlie come out. Like, there's part of me that's like, I do want to see it, but it's like a horror film. Like, you want to, but you don't at the same time. So,
you should run, but you still ask Keller to the dark corridor.
Yeah. You know you should just leave, but you're like, I want to go in that. Yeah. But no, I like a bit of carnage myself. So I'm saying that now, but I'm saying that as I'm in my Toy Story painted bed, like not bedroom, but like media room, because I love Toy Story, and it's not really giving me the how mental I can be. But
if you don't use Forky as a weapon, I'm going to be so disappointed.
No, I'm old school. This is old school Toy Story. This is Toy Story 1, Clive. Hand painted, thank you very much.
Amazing.
Made a stencil, did there? But no, I'm old school.
Take them all and just try and incorporate all the different Toy Story toys.
No, I wouldn't bring them into this world. They're too good.
What if they put you against Casey to try and battle the She-Wolves?
That could be nasty, because
You're your first singles, first tag.
You secretly know, like, it's that kind of thing with friends, like, you secretly know that they will forgive you quicker. It's like falling out with your mum. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, like, realistically, when we think about it, nobody should like fall out with their mum because it's your mum and she birthed you. But we all fall out with our mum, and it's because secretly we know she will forgive us. No matter how horrendous or bad or what we've done, she will eventually forgive us. So yeah, it could be pretty bad. Christ, my first debut match in ICW was with Casey, and I speared her so hard she like bruised her ribs from falling into a guardrail. Like, that's my best pal. So yeah, that could be
the match.
No. No, I've seen what she can do with a baseball bat. She won't. She doesn't. She gets this tunnel vision, but I get tunnel vision too. So that no, one of us would die. We can't. No, no. I don't want to kill my pal, and I don't want to die. So no, it's not happening.
We'll see. Ring of Honor though, like, how did you feel when they came knocking? 'Cause was it Mandy Leon that you faced in Bolton?
Yeah, Mandy Leon that I faced. That was surreal, man. Because like, again, I know I wrote like in my notebooks like I love CM Punk, but I do like I love someone that's got the gift of the gab. Like my boy is Edge, right? But again, gift of the gab. But at that point in time, CM Punk. But obviously, like his running sort of ROH was so different compared to the rest of the independents at the time, and the matches with him and Joe are just still people talk to them to this day. Yeah. But there's loads that came. But it was, in all honesty, when I got the message, I threw my phone across the room. Like I went ha and threw it on the couch, and I remember Wilfie being like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I just got a message from ROH asking for my details," and I'm like, "What?" And I remember it, like we had been watching a lot of it on like YouTube, just sitting in the living room, and so that was really cool. It was really sort of surreal, and it was that weird notion of like, I'm clearly doing something right. That they've actually come to me. It wasn't something that I applied for, or anything, like they came to me. But yeah, it was great. It was a great experience. It was great to see how they're also, because of the sort of background that I've got and the everything that I've studied, it was great to see how their sort of show worked as well in the background. But yeah, it was. I remember getting like the confirmation. So on the Tuesday, it was the Tuesday before I went down that I got like the proper confirmation email saying, right, okay, you're booked, this is the thing, yada yada, this is when we'll need you there, etc. And I was in training. Like I was at GPWA running drills, and I went and looked at my phone. It was like I was a wee water break, and I looked at my phone and went, ah! And sort of I also weirdly had this sort of idea in my head of like this new sort of thing I wanted to try. So I was in the ring sort of trying it with the guys and stuff. And it's a wee story, and Casey loves this story and loves to tell it. So the Sunday I was wrestling Veda Scott in London.
Yeah.
And Mike Bailey was there watching the match and stuff like that, and I had a chat with them. And the Tuesday I was at the training and I was figuring out this new stuff, and I got confirmed that this was happening. I was like, well, we better figure this out, boys. And went down and then hit a couple of like new sort of things that I thought of, like ways to sort of reverse things, etc. And at the end of the show, I was standing by, and Mike and Veda came up to me, and Mike was like, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, yeah, what's the matter? He was like, "See that sit out thing that you did in the match?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "How come that wasn't like something you used to get Veda down on Sunday?" And I was like, "Mate, do you want me to be honest? I figured it out on Tuesday." And he was like, "Well, okay, that's fine. Do it all the time." I was like, "Okay, no problem." But it was that weird sort of thing, like, how come that you didn't, like, there was plenty of times you could have used it on your match on Sunday. And I was like, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing on Sunday, Mike, I'll be honest. Like, I figured it. But no, it was such a great week. It was also like such a lovely locker room. Like I'll be honest, I turned up bang on time. Like bang on time. I was like, I'm here, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Because that's me. And it was nice because like there was like on that show as well, you had like Rampage Brown on the show. So it was, although Rampage is a terrifying human being, it was very nice to see a known face, like a welcome face. So like seeing him, and like obviously you've got the Haskins that were there, and I knew them from TNT and stuff. So seeing those faces were great to see, and being like, it was that kind of like, can you just tell them that I'm all right? Like I'm okay. So you don't need to worry about me. And but then getting to work with that, like again, there were a place I walked in and there was all this chicken, and I was just like, I'm not touching that chicken. Like, nope, that's not my chicken. And how nice everybody was, and how sort of like how much of a team they are. Like, it was one of those things. Like, the ROH locker room felt like a big family. They were trying to convince me to go back because they were staying in London, and they were like, "Just come back with us." And I was like, "I can't come stay with these in London. I live in Scotland." But yeah, it was a great experience. It was one off the bucket list. It was that. I've done ROH, and obviously the hope is that I can do more with them. But again, the world went on fire, so the world has changed. Like, we're in a history blip at the moment. Like, when we're all dead and gone, people will still talk about now. And it's that there's going to be kids in the future who talk about how their first WrestleMania they watched was Drew winning the title. And although that sounds insane to us, that's true. Like, that's going to be a thing in 20, 30 years' time when we're all buddies watching back, and there's this young whippersnapper going up the ranks, and he's like, the first one I watched was the COVID mania, and you're going to be like, what? Like, really? But yeah, it's that kind of way where you're like, okay, we're now going into a new, and like we're going into a different world. Nothing's going to go back to normal. We're just going to find a new normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope I can do other things with ROH in the future, and stuff with everybody. I'll go everywhere. Like,
what was it like in Tel Aviv when you was in Israel?
It was great, to be honest. It was the first time really, like, after a show that I came back to the hotel and my phone was blowing up with like thank you messages from going. It was lovely. I got to go like there was a really great promotion to work for because they were very like organised. Like, when I arrived on the plane, there was somebody waiting with a car to take me to my hotel. Then they took me to dinner, and then coming back, and then the show, and they still fed me afterwards, and a really well-oiled machine. Yeah. But yeah, it was great. It was great to work for, and I would love to go back. And getting to go to dinner with Billy Gunn was like a weird like icing on the cake. Like, this was all great, and everybody responded really well. Like, the crowd was great. It was in like a cinema. It was like this big sort of like cinema complex thing. It was really unusual. It was like, I've never wrestled in anything like it before.
Yeah.
But it was like we were on a stage where a cinema screen comes down, and then there was all the seats that were stacked up. But it was a great place to work. It was the same sort of idea. Like, they had one girl, and I was in to work with the one girl and trying to like get her through things and trying to teach her things in the match of like, go with this approach, or like, you should try and do this kind of thing. But yeah, the icing on the cake for me was getting to go to dinner with Billy Gunn, and my favourite of it was, you ever seen the film Inglourious Bastards?
Yeah.
Right, you know when Brad Pitt is trying to be an Italian film director, and he's like, "Buongiorno," that's Billy Gunn, right? That is Billy Gunn. He's the best. And he walked into this restaurant and said, "Buongiorno," and I was like, "Oh my god, that guy!" And like, I remember us walking to the car, and we would we're walking to the car, bags and everything. There's these two boys that are sort of local to the area driving us about and stuff. They're also wrestlers, and this old woman drives up beside Billy, and I don't know why she went to Billy, because he's clearly incredibly American. Like, he looks like Billy, like, yeah. So She rolls the window down and she's talking to him in Hebrew, right? She's, what? And all Billy keeps doing is going, see, right? And the woman's getting more and more and more and more upset. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, is she just getting an idea? You know, and he goes, and the other two boys are killing themselves laughing. And I'm going, what's going on? And he's laughing. He's like, what's funny? And they go, see pretty much means faster in Hebrew. So you've just stood at this old woman, Billy stood going, faster. And she's like, what? What are you doing faster than me for? And he's going, rush. So yeah, he's just, I've never met anybody else like him, but he is just unique. And like, being able to sort of sit and chat to him at dinner and like, he came and did a seminar at the school like years before I did this show, and for some reason he was just on me the entire time. Like, he just kept shouting at me. He was just like, get up, move, blah blah blah. He was on me the whole time, and I genuinely was like, right. So I was like, fine. And then after it, when I got on this show, I was like, I'm on the same show, me, right? And for about a year, every time I got off the mat, in my head, I thought, fuck you, Billy Gunn. Right? For a solid year. I was getting on like, fuck you, Billy Gunn. And being at dinner with him, he was talking about his school and coaching folk and how there's certain people that he'll shout it because he knows it moves them on and it encourages them and stuff like that. And I realised that's what he was doing to me that day. It was that weird moment of just like, you're not just picking on me because I'm a girl. You're picking on me because you want me to get better. So I told him, I went, you did this and you shouted at me for a time. And for a entire year, every time I got up off the ring, I thought, fuck you, Billy Gunn. And he just buckled. He was like, yeah! And it was great being able to be on a show with him, sort of showing the fact that, like, I'm here just as much as you're. Like, okay, you've probably had a first-class flight and you're probably getting paid a lot more money than I am, but I'm still on the same show as you. I'm still on the same bill as you. I'm still on the same poster as you. But I now understand what you were trying to do with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually getting to tell Billy Gunn that for a solid year, if not plus, I constantly thought, fuck you, Billy Gunn. And telling Billy Gunn that was a highlight. Like, that was the real, like, so glad I came now.
So with like moving back to ICW then. ICW Bard tomorrow, Saturday. It's on Peacock. It's on WWE Network. A full show of cage matches. Like, it's not really been seen since TNA's lockdown pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel for yourself? Like, stepping into the cage for the first time, but also because there's all these other cage matches, so you need to make sure it's going to be different and you can't do similar stuff as what other people might be doing. How, like, what's your mindset?
I need to make sure it's any different. I need to make sure that I do my job.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, my job is to go in there, be Angel Hayze, and make the statement line as that. But really, it's to make sure that people know their place. Because for so long, I feel like that's what I was not told, but it was kind of a thing that was sort of, I knew I had to know my place. So it's about time that everybody else did. And I'm going to go in there, I'm going to leave, and I feel more sorry for Angel Hayze. Because to me, let's look at it this way. When it comes to the stature of me and Angel Hayze, she's not really going to be able to manhandle me, where I can manhandle Angel Hayze, no problem. It's really, she's got to think about what's happening when she steps into the cage with me. Because how I see it, all ICW has done for me is sort of surround a ring with a weapon. Because I'm going to be able to just, if I wish, throw her against the steel cage. I can manhandle her wherever. Really what boils down to is tomorrow is that it depends on how many years I want to knock off her career.
Yeah.
Because years are going to come off it. And again, I keep stressing this isn't personal. This is change. This is required change. And yeah, I'm going to knock a couple of years off your career, but believe you me, the career you're going to have in the era you're going to have it is going to be much greater and better for you than having those couple of extra years, but with not having the respect that you deserve. I know you're talented. I know you're talented. I know you've got a bright future ahead of you, Angel. It's just going to be slightly shorter after tomorrow.
Tough words. So again, everybody, you can find it on Peacock and WWE Network. Molly, thank you for coming on the show. Like, before we do let you go, what are the goals? You mentioned Ring of Honor was that bucket list moment. You've ticked that one off. Where do you find yourself? What's next for you in the future? Is it NXT UK? Is it AEW? Is it Japan with Stardom?
They're all feasible places and I would happily go to them. But right now, my main focus is that ICW Women's Championship. Because I feel like that's the next step. That's the next statement. And as I said, again, I keep stressing this. This is not personal to any talent out there. This isn't about individuals who put their bodies on the line stepping between those ropes. It's for the ones that have held me back so that they never hold anybody back again. And I'm going to hold that title in the ring. I'm going to hold. I'm trying to calm myself down because I'm getting annoyed and I'm trying not to just. Casey's dealt with me, screaming and spluttering and shouting and being so wound up. But I'm going to hold that title above my head. They're going to have to post on social media. They're going to have to broadcast it on Peacock and on the WWE Network. They're going to have to admit that they were wrong. Because let's be honest, nobody likes admitting they're wrong, but sometimes you just have to do it when it's clear. And that's what it's going to be. And I keep on repeating this. They're going to be damn lucky if I don't set that championship on fire. Because there needs to be change, and there will be. And now that I'm in, I am the inevitable. Christ, I might sound like Thanos, but he had a point. And I've got mine. And that point is that you can't get rid of me. I am going to be part of your history. You're going to have to write the history books where I was ICW World Women's Champion. And that is an honour. That is something that you take with you, because the likes of Kaylee Ray and Viper travelled this world with that championship to actually make it a world championship. That's no easy feat. But I think it's about time that you treated every single person who followed for that championship with the respect that they deserve. And that's what's going to happen. I promise you that.
Brilliant. And everybody, you can find out, see what happens again this Saturday on the WWE Network on Peacock. Molly Spartan, clearly passionate, wanting that ICW World Women's Championship, and it'll be interesting to see where you do go with that. But Molly, where can people find you on social media to see you eventually get this title and maybe set it on fire?
I'm trying to be calm now. You can find me pretty much on all social media. If you want to find it all in one go, just Google Molly Spartan. I'm on Molly Spartan on Twitter, Molly Spartan on Instagram, Molly Spartan on TikTok. I think I'm Real Molly Spartan on Facebook. But yeah, I'd suggest you follow, because there's going to be a path of destruction. There's going to be, it's that sort of way where I'm not scared to be villainized, because a lot of people in the world who really invoke change were villainized in their time and then seen for what they did in the future and how much they changed things. And that's what I'm after. And it's not just me. It's not just going to be me doing this. There's going to be a whole host of us doing this. And that's the exciting part. So don't get run over by the bandwagon. Be on it. This one's going to be good.
Brilliant. Everybody, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, follow Molly on social media, and again, check ICW Bard out on WWE Network and Peacock. Until next time, bye for now.
Friday morning.